Thanks so much for tuning in to Dial the Gate. My name is David the Wraith Reed. Hope you're having a great afternoon. We just got wrapped up with The Companion in a pre-recorded episode, and we're moving now on to James Lafazanos, who played, believe it or not, a Wraith. Many, many Wraiths in Stargate Atlantis. But before we bring him in, if you like Stargate and you want to see more content like this on YouTube, it would mean a great deal if you click that like button. It really makes a difference with YouTube's algorithm and will definitely help the show grow its audience. Please also consider sharing this video with a Stargate friend, and if you want to get notified about future episodes, click that subscribe icon. Giving the bell icon a click will notify you the moment a new video drops, and you'll get my notifications of any last-minute guest changes. And clips from this stream will be released over the course of the next several days on the gateworld.net YouTube channel, where they get exclusive clips. As this episode is pre-recorded, we've had submissions for James already previously, so we're going to run those questions in this episode. So the mods will be there in the forum, in the live chat, just to moderate. They will not actually be taking questions because we already have those questions. So I really appreciate you tuning in, and let's go ahead and bring in James Lafazanos. I'm privileged to welcome, for the first time ever to Dial the Gate, James Lafazanos, one of many Wraith commanders, actually many of one. How do you look at that? Do you all consider them like the same kind of person, or are they all different to you? How do you wrap your head around that?
I think someone explained it best whenever they made the comparison to South Park. He's like Kenny. You keep killing him, but he keeps coming back. But yeah, I mean, like they're all different. They all have their own personalities. But it's like it's that same vibe throughout that species. It's like they're pretty, they got a little bit of an intensity to them.
Just a wee bit. So how are you, James? How are things going?
I'm good. Thanks for asking. Yes. How are things over there? Where are you in? It looks like Pennsylvania, or
I'm in Nashville.
Oh, you're in Nashville. Okay,
yep.
Cool. Nice.
Yeah. So it is.
I've never been to Nashville, but I would love to check it out sometime.
It's a busy city. It's a loud city. You have to appreciate music, or at least tolerate it.
I hear it's an amazing city for music.
I'm very happy to be here. You what now?
Yeah, right. Doesn't Jack White live there from the White Stripes?
I have no idea who that is.
Oh,
but
yeah.
It's quite possible. Okay.
Yeah, and I heard that at one point he moved to Nashville, Tennessee from, I think, where he was in the UK. So
Jack White, Nashville.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. American singer-songwriter, multi-instrumentalist, and producer. Best known for White Stripes. Absolutely exactly. Right.
Yeah, I'm a bit of a music head, so
well, there you go. Then you have to come down, and when you do, please let me know. I'll take you out to dinner. So please, there's a strip down here that is amazing. It looks like Vegas from the 1960s.
Oh wow, that sounds awesome. Yeah. I mean, I'll pick you up on that sometime.
Absolutely. So, James, when did you realize this is what you wanted to do for the rest of the life? How old were you when you knew you wanted to act? What really set this trajectory into your career? If you don't mind taking me back.
No problem. Yeah. I mean, like some of my earliest influences, like in as far as like going to movie theaters, were of the sci-fi, variety. Like I think Empire Strikes Back was one of the first films I saw in theaters. E.T. was one of the first films I saw in theaters. So like those two particular movies like stood out as like, oh wow, like they can put magic up on the screen, and I guess that planted the first couple of seeds. And then when I started doing like theater in grade school, I got cast in the very first production I ever auditioned for in our like grade 6. I was 11 years old. Production of Sound of Music, and I played Captain Von Trapp. And
that's great.
Yeah. I mean, I became a father to whatever it was, 10, 12 children, so to speak, the character. And my voice was changing at the time too, which was great because I had a solo Edelweiss, and it was like Edelweiss. It was a treat for the audience. If they were looking for comedy, they got it. But it was fun, and it gave me that first experience of like performing in front of a crowd. and getting laughs and getting that audience feedback. And yeah, I kind of got hooked from there, I think.
Wow. Well, that's what. Now, did you continue this into college?
I mean, like I actually switched high schools at one
Oh,
point in
wow.
time
Okay.
to go to like this bigger school. I went to the school originally that was called St. Thomas Aquinas, a small Catholic school. Like they called it the Hall because there's literally one
Okay.
hall, like 300 or 400 students. And then I switched to this big high school, which to us was kind of like the American high school you would see on television shows. That had like a football team and 2,000 students and a serious drama program. And that was in like, I think grade 11 or 12. And I switched because of some of the teachers there. And we did some really cool plays, some really existential stuff, like stuff that was just beyond what I kind of started off doing, which were, I started off doing musicals, like I said, Sound of Music. And then I did Bumble, played Mr. Bumble and Oliver Twist in grade 8. And I was like Tony in West Side Story in grade 9. And then I switched to the Banting Memorial High School in Alliston, Ontario, which is where I was born. And yeah, I got in with a good group of like serious theater, heads, folks. And I really, yeah, I got into kind of like a little more serious theater, and it was stuff. We had a great playwright, Ryan Breeden, who was doing this amazing stuff. And yeah, we did a production of The Raft by Stephen Leacock, which entered this festival, and we got through this whole Sears Ontario Drama Festival, which was kind of a big deal back in the day. And it just we traveled all over Ontario performing the show. It was like a Bun Raku style production of The Raft, which was just two characters. If you're not familiar with it's a short play, with two characters on a raft, and we were controlling like the characters, 3 people per person. They were actually like
full on
puppets. Yeah, it was pretty cool.
And the voices.
And I did the voice for the male character, and yeah, that was it was just like a next level production from my humble beginnings in Catholic schools. So yeah, that teacher there, Stephen Thomas, was the former director of the Hamilton Opera. Like he was kind of like a big deal for a small town, Alliston. And he just told me straight out, he's like, yeah, if you want to make a career out of this, you could. So, you may want to consider this school. So he gave me some great advice and was a great, just kind of early, sending me in the right direction, kind of voice of positive encouragement. And yeah, I ended up going ahead and pretty much moving downtown Toronto and getting my first agent, and then starting auditions and booking some stuff, just like some commercials here and there to begin with. And then, yeah, it wasn't until I moved from Toronto to Vancouver, I think it was about 2002, and then started auditioning there, which is where I auditioned and booked the role of the Wraith character, the first Wraith character, and all the Wraith characters, obviously, that I played.
Tell us about getting Rising. Tell us about that audition process.
Okay, so that was for casting director Sean Cossey, and Sean is a great casting director here in Vancouver and still casts many productions. And it was in a trailer on the set of, they did it at Bridge Studios. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Bridge Studios, but that's where they all, you probably are. And so there was a trailer on set that they were doing the auditions in. I was like, this is kind of funny. I haven't auditioned on set in a trailer before. And because of the nature of being a trailer, you could hear through the walls, the other people auditioning. And I was hearing the direction being given to each of the actors. And I was like, you know what? I don't know if I totally agree with the direction being given. Maybe just because I had prepared something totally different from the direction I heard being given to the other actors in the room, that I was like, you know what? I will do it my way first.
Yeah.
And then if he wants to hear it with his direction, then I'll do it with his direction. And so I just stuck to my guns and did it the way that I thought worked best. And I think that's what made the impression. And then I was like, I can do it again with the direction that you gave me. And he's like, yeah, sure. And I did the take that he wanted with his direction. And I I think it was the direction I gave myself, which made me stood apart, or stand apart, I should say, from the other people auditioning for that particular role.
Do you recall what that was? What was your take that was a little different? Your take meaning approach, not take meaning take two, take three.
It's pretty much what you saw on screen.
Okay.
I just made him, I think, just more menacing than what I was hearing in the audition. I just kind of went all in with like, how intense can I make this being / creature / alien vampire? How can I get that across? And I just went into that zone, which I felt was where that vibe that became, I don't know. I mean, I guess I kind of set the tone for, I guess, future Wraiths, because it was, I was the first one doing it, but everybody who did it since, like, had their own cool versions. But I came in with what I felt worked with what was written on the page. And that's, to me, like, if what's on the page, like what's written, like if it's good writing, and I like the writing of that first episode a lot, and other episodes of course too, but that particular first one, which was my first introduction to a script from Stargate Atlantis, I was like, okay, I think I get it, and this is how I'm gonna do it. So it was just kind of instinct. I mean, like, that's what I have to trust in whenever I do. Even sometimes when I get direction that's really different from my initial kind of take on stuff, at least I'll offer my instinctual kind of like read, and then I'm happy to go whatever direction the director wants to go after that.
Wow. And with a character like these, there's only so much. They don't do a lot of talking. It's a lot more visual. It's a lot more just energy, like menacing. So I imagine it's not a typical way that you can find out a character by, well, what was his upbringing like? Where'd he go to school? Who bullied him? That none of that applies with this. This is a very alien sort of being. And Lick Queen Becky wanted to know, where did you take your inspiration in bringing these creatures to life? What did you have to go with that you just ran with?
Right. Yeah. I mean, like, I can draw on a lot from E.T. He was a really menacing alien that.
No, what? You didn't see the same movie I saw.
Yeah. No, obviously not. But I mean, like, there was definitely other aliens out there in the sci-fi universe that had similar vibes. I mean, there's a ferocity to the Wraith character that you could find in like Worf on Star Trek Next Generation. He's part of the crew there, but he's still got that warrior instinct. So a little bit of that, like almost Klingon vibe, but it's different from the Klingon vibe too. So it's like a little bit kind of Anne Rice, like Interview the Vampire, a little bit of kind of like that kind of vibe, like classic Nosferatu vampire. Like, I think Nosferatu was probably like the original like vampire on ever films, like and that was done so much. It was a silent film, right?
I'm not mistaken. I think that's correct. Yeah.
I
think one of my audience members actually brought up Nosferatu, and that like that kind of role giving you an edge. And
I mean, I get confused because I really like the movie about Nosferatu with William Dafoe playing who's an amazing actor, playing Nosferatu. So that's why I was like, was it silent or was it not silent? Because
William Dafoe's a little bit more recent, but yeah.
Yeah, a little more recent. But I'm pretty sure you may have want to Google check that.
Oh, I definitely will.
But I'm pretty sure the original Nosferatu was a silent film, and they had a really amazing score to it. And with that musical score and just like that whole look, and which in the makeup department, obviously for Nosferatu was amazing as well, just like the makeup department for Stargate Atlantis. Like once you put on, like, get into prosthetics and that whole 2-hour process of getting, the wig, the contacts, the teeth put in, it's like you have this time to like get into the character. And when you see that in the mirror, it really like, I have to give huge credit to the makeup department, because they do half the work in bringing out that which is that vibe, because a lot of it is in the look.
D Pixtian wanted to know, what was your feeling seeing yourself in that makeup for the very first time, standing in front of that mirror?
It almost like gives myself shivers, like giving myself shivers. Yeah, it's because sometimes, like I would notice it just from other crew and cast members. Like I would try to joke around and stuff between takes and try to keep things light for the most part whenever we're not in the scene, because some people would just be like, you could tell they were like a little bit on pins and needles when I walked by, because it was just like, whoa, that guy looks crazy. Like, it's like, and then when I got into character and really got into it in some of the takes where there's more like, like intense scenes, then some people did, say to me afterwards, like, whoa, man, that like shivers. And I've been working on shows for however many. So I knew I was on the right track with doing that particular character justice. And so, yeah, sometimes I did scare myself with where the energy went and where and how I looked and everything. It just was like, I had to kind of like, I struggled with it, to be honest, for a while there. I was like, how can I really keep playing this? Because when it's over 2 seasons, it is intense, because I obviously never played a character like that for that length of time before, and it's a serious commitment, because you can't just get in and out of it like whenever they yell cut, because you still look like that character.
Correct.
And you're gonna look like that character for like however long the day is, 12, 14 hours, however long, plus the time to get into makeup and to get out of makeup. So it's you're really in it, like it's not easy being green. To quote Kermit the Frog, I've said it once, and I'll say it again. It's not easy being green.
Did D. John wanted to know, did the role ever bring you nightmares? Or contribute to unsettling you subconsciously that way?
I mean, like, I remember what episode where my character was like getting into the dreams. I think of Rachel Luttrell's character.
Yes.
But yeah, which episode was that?
That was The Gift.
The Gift, right? Yes. Yeah. And so that whole episode was kind of dreamy. So because of the dreamy nature of that episode, I think it kind of warped just even reality that day, because it was just kind of like, oh, everything's just a little bit off today. It's actual nightmares. I don't know about actual nightmares, but I think I did struggle with it. I mean, like, I only did season 1 and season 2, and I chose to leave the show after the end of season 2.
Season 3.
Was it season? Yeah,
wasn't it season? No, I'm sorry. You're right. Season 2. You're absolutely right. My apologies.
No problem. I did the last episode of season 2, I believe, and I think that was the same episode.
Allies, and we saw yourself for the first time.
Right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I did have, like I said, I did struggle with the intensity of it, because I come from like a comedy background. Like most of the stuff I did, like leading up to that was of comedic nature, like a lot of comedic commercials and stuff, which maybe not seen internationally, but seen in Canada nationally and stuff like this, and that's kind of a little more of my everyday vibe. So it was kind of a polar opposite of what I usually embody energy wise. And so I think I went after 2 seasons. I was like, yeah, I think I fully explored it, and I think I'm ready to step away and let somebody else to have the opportunity. And I loved everybody on the show. I loved the cast and crew. It was just me just having to be like, yeah, I think it's time I go back to my first love of comedy. And I went back to Toronto and started studying at Second City comedic improv training center, and I got right back into comedy. And I think that's what I was missing at the time, but I really enjoyed the time I had doing it, and I appreciate it more now than ever. I think at the time I was like, I was pretty young too. I mean, like I was probably like, we're talking almost 20 years ago now, right? Like it's
Exactly.
19 years ago that 2003, right?
2004, the show started airing. So yeah.
Yeah, I think we started shooting in 2003, but yeah, it started airing in 2004. Yeah, so whatever it is, 18 years, like it's basically half a lifetime ago for me. So yeah, I think I was still young and just didn't know how to handle a lot of the stuff that came with that. And so yeah, a little bit was overwhelming for me, but I think I think I've definitely grown a lot since then and since that project, and I come to really appreciate that experience now more than ever.
In hindsight, do you regret leaving when you did, or was it still strategically the best time for you in hindsight to take a bow?
I mean, timing is like, it's hard to say. I mean, like hindsight is 2020. Mm-hmm. And there's part of me that's like, oh, I wonder if I stayed in like the full 5 seasons, like how that would have been different for everything. But you can't think that way. I feel like at the time I was really struggling with it. In mm-hmm. fact, I was struggling with it at the end of season 1. And so I was like, I'll do one more season. And then if I'm not feeling it after one more season, then I will. But I mean, I was feeling those same things after season 1. So it wasn't a new feeling that came up at the end of season 2. It was something that I was just like, I wanted to, do by myself, like do good by myself.
And also, we're not just talking leaving Stargate, we're also talking leaving the West Coast too and heading back east. So there's a lot going on.
The show, I left the city. Like it was a huge like change for me, like leaving, and it wasn't an easy decision. Like I literally was like, I had a therapist at the time that I was like talking about it with regularly and being like, and yeah, I really like doing this. This is the biggest success I've had in my acting career. It's an amazing experience. Any actor should be like totally grateful as I am for that experience. But at the same time, I was like, it was kind of a little bit heart-wrenching for me, and I was kind of like, okay, I just kept going and going and going. But by the end of season 2, I was like, okay, yeah, I think I need to step away and get back to my roots of comedy, and just and I think that's kind of my happy place, so to speak. And yeah, I mean, I guess, yeah, again, I felt like it was time at the time.
I would think, and I've been fortunate enough to have a number of the Atlantis folks, the Stargate folks in general on the show. And I would think under normal circumstances, doing the number of episodes that you were doing every season would be stressful enough. But to add on top of that, the layers of makeup and the prosthetics and the teeth and everything that you were going through, I can imagine after a little bit while it'd be like, is there an angle to this I haven't explored? I think we're good. Yeah. And I wouldn't blame you.
Yeah. I mean, the one other possibility was if like one of the Wraith like actually was so like turned from his species and like went vegan or whatever,
right?
And like chose not to feed off of humans, and then like walked a new kind of way of life, then maybe like that I would consider that, and like to have the maybe camaraderie of the crew and be part of like a crew, kind of like Worf is. I mean, I think that makes a big difference. I think. I mean, he obviously I referenced it before, but yeah, Star Trek Next Generation was a huge influence on me, and I loved the character of Worf, and I did impressions of the character of Worf, and I felt like, yeah, his whole thing with like being part of the Federation, but also being, of this warrior clan of the Klingons, he found that balance in the character, the writers as well, obviously, but as far as how he portrayed it, and having those moments where he's doing those ceremonies that he needs to do, but also, representing the Federation on the deck. Like, yeah, I think that would have been the type of character shift that would be needed for me to continue in that capacity as a non-human, heavily prosthetic kind of character. Yeah.
There's a whole depth to the Wraith there. The Andee, who says hi, by the way, she told me to tell you hello.
Hi.
Andee Frizzell, I asked her once, I said, do you view them as evil? And she said, I'm not evil. I'm just hungry. And Green Gun and Why with Hunt wanted to know, to take us into the psychology of the Wraith and slipping into that mindset. Do you see them as a negative force at work in the Pegasus Galaxy, or do you see them as just behaving exactly to their nature?
I mean, it's funny because I just had a conversation with my cousin's daughter, Chloe, who lives in Montreal, and I spent some time in Montreal after I lived in Toronto, after I left Vancouver. And she's been watching all of the Star Wars for the first time. She's like 7 years old. She's telling me all the Star Wars, and she was just so excited about the most recent one she watched. And I was telling her how I just auditioned for this animated series where the character like literally had bad guy in his name, and he was always referencing how he was a bad guy, and he was like, oh, I don't say sorry because I'm the bad guy. And so he had this self-awareness about being the bad guy, and we talked about that. And in comparison to some of the characters in episode 1 and episode 2 and 3 of which were the third, the fourth, fifth, and sixth movies made in the Star Wars universe, and how but the original story, where Anakin grows up to become Vader, and how like certain characters are just they don't see themselves as evil, but they do things that are beyond their own awareness of being evil. Now, when you have the situation of the Wraith, which are dependent on not necessarily humans, but other life to sustain their life. I mean, like, I don't know. I'm gonna turn that question back around and being like, well, are humans inherently evil? We don't see ourselves as evil, but a lot of us consume so many different types of animals, and we don't think twice about it. Comes prepared in the grocery store, all nicely packaged, and it's just like, yeah, I'm just having a burger or just having a steak, but you know what? There was a lot of suffering behind that, and maybe you didn't see it, but it's just like, do you consider? I mean, I am vegan, so
yeah, it's a fair question from a vegan to state that to the rest of us.
Maybe I have a perspective here, but still, like, I think that much like a lizard or a dinosaur, like Tyrannosaurus Rex, that just hunts because that's what it eats. It's a carnivore. It eats meat, as opposed to like a brontosaurus, which is like a plant eater. Sometimes it's just the way that they were designed on the molecular DNA level. Sometimes, but if you have like an awareness level like we do as humans, then it becomes a choice. We can choose what fuels us. We can choose not only what fuels us as human beings, but what fuels that which is that gets us around. Like, do we want to choose an electric vehicle or an oil burning vehicle? And what's the effects of each, right? So it's just like we all have these different fuels. And I think I bring this up now because in 2022, the climate crisis is real, it's undeniable, and it's directly linked to what we consume in our food and what we consume in our other methods of living and transportation, i.e. fossil fuel burning vehicles, all these kind of things. So yeah, I mean, you can say that argument, and about humanity, and just be like, are we just ignorant by and large as a species on the planet, that we're just doing this destruction of Mother Earth, our own home, and possibly causing irreversible damage for future generations? Or are we just not collectively at that consciousness level where we can truly put into play things that are best for our long-term survival on this planet, as opposed to short-term gains and a certain, powerful entities, corporations, just exploiting basically the planet and people, because sometimes they look at us like cattle, it's just like, buy our product, and they'll sell to you in the commercial. And so this is where I'm kind of like, I do think, going back to keeping it grounded in the Stargate reality, it was part of their nature, and they do kind of represent, I think, an energy in any kind of universe. There is that energy of just like consumption, right? That's just like ravenous consumption. Like there's never enough. Like, you may get your fill from, in the case of a wraith, from one being, but sometimes it just activates your hunger even more, and it makes you want to, as a wraith character, feed more. But yeah, I think there's those kind of energies at play sometimes on Earth as well. When you look at, I think I brought up corporations. When you look at the definition of a corporation, and there was literally a documentary done by a local filmmaker here called The Corporation, and they had a checklist, and it was all the checklist items of what a psychopath is. And I've talked to people now who are in heads of business, and they talk about some of the people who run some businesses, like the CEOs and stuff, and they're like, oh yeah, they fit that bill, because they don't see what is enough. They just always are like more. And so this is where I've really embraced kind of like simple living, just like daily meditation, just trying to keep things grounded as much as possible for me, like, so that I can, enjoy the moment, try to live like not making a big imprint as far as like my lifestyle. Like, I don't drive a fossil fuel burning vehicle. I don't, there's always things I can improve upon. Like I said, I'm plant-based, but it's just, yeah, I guess these are things that mean a lot to me. And so, yeah, playing the Wraith character, it made me realize that, yeah, this is in a sci-fi storyline, but it's things that resonate with people for a reason. There's a reason that even just the concept of like portals that are stargates, the reason people are into that is because it on some level it makes sense. And I would not be surprised within like 50 to 100 years that we actually discover and or create something that is like a Stargate, where you can travel like a wormhole through to other dimensions and or other parts of the universe. I mean, it just makes sense to people on some level, and I think that's the case with the Wraith too. It resonates with people, because it's like, yeah, that's the vibe of quote unquote evil, even if they don't know that they're even themselves. It's a vibration. I think there's just lower vibrational beings, and sometimes they're not aware that they're evil, and they just do what they got to do to survive. And then higher vibrational beings can sometimes view those other beings and being like, that is evil. And they label the term evil, but it could be just ignorance. It could be just that they didn't evolve to know better.
And in the Stargate lore, we find out that the ancients were kind of responsible for making them. So again, it goes back on us, or our ancestors at least, unleashing something into the world that we didn't realize the trouble we get into, and as a result, we're not taking responsibility for it as well. So there's a lot of parallels.
Yeah, I mean, you could say the same thing about the other like major storyline through so many different sci-fi productions, TV shows, films, and that is the awareness of like AI. Because I actually didn't know that fact about how the ancients. So thanks for sharing that. The ancients created the Wraith. So you could say the same thing about where we're at with creating, artificial intelligent life right now, and we're at that point where we're just like figuring out like how to have robotic beings orient themselves in reality, and autonomous driving, all the technology that's involved in that. Even Elon Musk, of Tesla, has said that we're starting out as a car company, but we'll probably be known as a robotics company when it comes to like history. And he's already seeing that as a direction, because once they figure out autonomous driving, then autonomous, robots or androids or AI, is right at the next step, right?
Yeah, it seems to be a race to create this something, this intelligence, and who's going to get there first, and what characteristics is it going to have. It's amazing and scary.
Yeah, and so there's a lot of choices, like with creating something like that, and how do you create? I just watched. It came up in an audition that I was doing recently, where they asked for a voice that was kind of like a Siri style voice, like a robotic, but pretty fluent. And they referenced iRobot with Will Smith, which is based on Isaac Asimov. And I went and watched that movie because I never saw it when it first came out, and I was like, "Oh, this is interesting." Just the laws that they give.
Three laws safe, yeah.
The 3 laws, right? So yeah, I mean, like, you would have to have those kind of laws, and then it would have to be something that could be uncorruptible, or you couldn't hack it, or I mean, like, but how would that be? Like, so yeah, I think we have to tread very carefully into that territory, like as far as creating things that could come back to, cause issues down the line, because like I've seen it in so many storylines. In the case of iRobot, it's like, they saw what humans were doing to the earth. There was like this weird environmental message in iRobot where it's like, humanity is destroying the planet, so we have to get humanity in check, so you don't ruin Mother Earth. So that was kind of interesting. I've been reading some other sci-fi lately. John Scalzi's Fuzzy Nation. I don't know if you've ever heard of John Scalzi.
Definitely John Scalzi. He contributed to Stargate Universe, but I've not heard of Fuzzy Nation.
Yes, and he contributed to Stargate Universe. Yes, but he wrote a book called Fuzzy Nation, and it well, I'll just say that much. But it was recommended to me by a friend, and it's really interesting, the intersection of, like, it's kind of takes place on another planet, but it's dealing with the primitive creatures of that planet, and how we interact with them, and how we either give them rights as either humans or sentient life or non-sentient life, and like what's their criteria for whether they have for sentience and stuff like that.
Sounds like a good metaphor to check out.
Oh yeah, it's interesting. It's an interesting book. There's it kind of delves into this kind of like whole court case regarding it, so it almost turns into like a sci-fi courtroom kind of. But it's interesting, and I think it won some awards, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, I listened to the audiobook read by Will Wheaton.
There we go. Yeah.
So if you get a chance, listen to the audiobook of Fuzzy Nation read by Will Wheaton and written by John Scalzi.
I will put the link to the Audible in the show notes right here. He also did both the Ready Player novels. Will read them, and he did a great job, so that's terrific.
Oh really? Okay. I'll have to check
Ready
out
Player 1 and 2. Yep, he's funny.
He does a great job of, because there's a good sense of humor to Fuzzy Nation too.
Oh, okay.
And he does a great job in doing different characters' voices, and just he's an amazing performer.
Can you take us through the original makeup process for you?
Yeah.
What time would you get in the morning, and how would it proceed, if you don't mind?
Yeah. I mean, it all depended on what crew call it was. So say if crew call was like 7 a.m., for example, then I would have to be there as early sometimes as 4 a.m. And so that means me getting up at like sometimes 2:30 or 3 a.m. to be on set for 4 a.m. because sometimes it was like a bit of a commute. And then being in the chair, and it wasn't like that all the time. It was just like there was a few days like that. But typically it's 2 to 3 hours, because it took me about 2.5 hours on average with the costume as well as the makeup. So I think they usually had me there 3 hours before crew call. So whatever crew call was, if be it 7, I'd be there at 4 a.m. If it was 10 a.m., I would be there at 7 a.m. If it was noon, I would be there at 9 a.m. So yeah, and then I'd be there just like a little bit after, the day wrapped. Probably about, it didn't take as long to get out of makeup. It was like less than an hour, like maybe 30 something minutes, maybe to get out of makeup. But yeah, it started with the prosthetics, and those were glued on, and then it was making sure all the edges of were glued on nice and smooth, and then the adding of color, whether it would be with an airbrush or actual like hand brush, like painting in certain either sometimes the tattoos that the Wraith had, and or just like extra coloration as far as different green tones or what have you. And then it was usually contacts after that, and teeth usually came last, and then it would go to wardrobe, and then I think, we do the wig, and then the wardrobe. So where did the wig come in again? Yeah, I'm pretty sure the wig was what was it first? Oh geez.
You would have to have your hair like put down, I would think, before they could put any of the other.
Yeah, I was gonna say, sorry, maybe the wig was very first. I'm confused.
Wow. Okay.
The wig was, but yeah, the wardrobe obviously came last, and that would include. They did my hands as well, right?
Exactly,
so
both sides.
Yeah, so sometimes they'd be doing that as well at the same time they were doing, because sometimes it'd be 2 people working on me at once, and one person would be doing my face and head, and the other would be doing the hands and the nails and stuff like that. Yeah.
Wow.
Right, and then the Wraith sometimes had some interesting kind of like jewelry as well.
Armor. Armor, so that when they close their hand, they protect their vital organs.
That's right. Yeah. The opening there in the hand. Yeah. Sometimes that came with wardrobe, because that was sometimes those were wardrobe pieces. Yeah. Depending on the Wraith, and because they all had different little accessories. Yeah.
Jeez.
Accessories. It's all about the accessories. I don't
Absolutely.
know, like if you ever collected figurines, which it looks like you may have, judging by your background.
Have a few pieces.
I collected like Star Wars characters, like was my first kind of figurines I really got into. And so, making sure you had all those accessories were key. You got some good stuff over there. What's that? Ooh, nice. That's a great helmet. Yeah, that looks legit.
So this takes me, so this is one of my, and it's interesting since you brought that up.
If you pull up a He-Man,
funny because this is
this
is a real coincidence.
Yeah. Oh, weird. iRobot. Wow. Okay.
Yep.
There are no coincidences. It's all synchronicity.
That's right.
Everything that we're saying is being said for a reason.
Oh gosh, that's funny. Yeah. What Zuby Force wanted to know, what was, you may not recall this, what was the longest day you were in costume?
There was a couple of long days.
Yeah.
I remember, and I think easily a 14-hour day was pretty long. But I think there was a couple of. I think legally they couldn't go past 16 hours.
Okay.
Because they needed at least, as per ACTRA rules, which is the union for actors here in Canada. It's SAG in the United States. I think it's 6. As far as, or at least at that time, it was 16 hours maximum. But even then, they wouldn't. Only if they had to really get something in would they ever go that length, because they needed at least 8 hours downtime. But I think it definitely went 14, maybe a little bit more than 14, possibly as much as 14 and a half. I don't know if there was ever a 15-hour day, possibly. For me, I think there definitely was. But as far as like everybody else's day, like when I think of set days, I think of it when crew call is, for some reason. But for me, like I've definitely done longer than 14-hour days with my time to getting makeup and then getting out. It was like sometimes for me like a 16-hour day for sure. Yeah.
Was the pilot the longest? Because in the beginning, I mean, the makeup process improved as the show went on. But I mean, in the beginning with the silicone gloves and, you know, they were really figuring it out.
Well, I mean, I mean, Todd Masters, who was the head of makeup, doing all the creations and overseeing all the work. He's amazing. Just a true master at his craft, a genius in artistically and with makeup, and he was great, and his whole team were so great. So I gotta give a big shout out to them, because sometimes I'd be in there at 4 and I wouldn't be in the cheeriest of moods because of my early call times, and they made it all good. So I really gotta thank them. Big ups to them for sure.
Wow. Michael Alton, in terms of makeup, how difficult was it to articulate? Was there anything that you were told not to do because you'd be sent back into the trailer? Was there anything that you just had to fake by, whatever means necessary? What'd you do? How'd you pull it off?
Told what I couldn't do in the makeup? I mean, it was always a challenge going to the bathroom.
Oh God. I sold all of your costumes, and the amount of leather that the cows that you wore, just absolutely outrageous. These things were heavy.
Yeah, well, because some of the material, you may have noticed, it has like texture and kind of like bumpy. They use like stingray skin in, which is like almost like a shell, but it's like a fine like layer of leathered shelling. Like
it's almost like a sandpaper, except it's just like a similar texture. It was extraordinary.
Yeah, almost like a pearly kind of like texture, sandpapery, kind of thick, but almost like a mini turtle shell to the skin. It's interesting. But yeah, it had weight to it too. So, so it's one thing, to get everything makeup wise too, but the costumes, like just walking around in them, they were a good weight. I mean, like I was working out at the time, and it's a good thing I was, because regularly, because it was I don't know how many pounds it was, but it was enough that I felt it.
Yeah, the just absolutely gorgeous costumes, the money that went into these things. And I would think that really once the makeup one piece, but the costumes, and once you put that on, you knew exactly who you were walking onto that stage. You were just missing your motorcycle and your electric guitar.
Yeah, pretty much. They had this kind of like almost like death metal kind of vibe to them. They had an attitude, and the costumes definitely brought that out as well. There were some amazing costumes on that. So again, big up to the costume department for doing an amazing job, because I was just having a conversation with somebody this past week, and it was on the set of a different show, and which I can't say any details of right now, but
okay.
I was saying it was during a costume fitting, and I was like, I think I was referencing The Foundation. Have you seen this Apple original
I've
series?
seen the first 2 episodes. I'm working on it, though. It's very well done.
Wow, super well done. Like, they spared no expense for the production of that show.
Correct.
And some of the costumes in that show are fantastic. And that, for me, like, is a big indicator sometimes of being like, oh, they put a lot into this show. You can tell by their costume and the design of their costumes, and just the textures and quality. So for me, that's a big thing when it comes to like raising a level of a production, and Stargate definitely had that really high level of costuming going on that made everything look so fantastic. But yeah, Foundation, that's another great show.
That's a good show.
I'm just gonna mention all of the shows.
No, this is a good thing, because it's all the audience. It's all the same genre. So
this is it. Yeah, I mean, like, I'm as much of a fan as anyone who watched me do stuff. So that's what you have to understand, is that I'm just another fan who happened to, be in the makeup and get the role for that particular show. But otherwise, I'm the guy who's like fanning out on the new trailer and all the rest of it for the new show, the new film, the new video game, because I'm into some gaming too.
There you go. Akosh wanted to know, what was it like working with Andee as all the queens?
Andee is awesome. She's
sang like your praises.
She's like a sister to me. Like, I have 2 sisters. I'm one of 4 kids. I have an older sister, a younger sister, and a younger brother. And she is like my third sister. Like, she's awesome. She's just like, anytime I was working with Andee, it was like always like, oh, cool, this is going to be a great day. This is like, because not only is she just such a cool person, but she's one of like my kind on the show. Like, she's a Wraith, so she gets it. She understands everything I'm experiencing, and it's a shared experience when I'm on set with her. And not only that, but she's just got such a great vibe all the time that it's a shared experience that's elevated. So Andee is A1 awesomeness all the way. Big ups, Andee. Like, Andee, you're the shit. That's, she's cool beans. She's cool beans.
Dex says, James, I think you were by far the best actor in Stargate Atlantis, and you really gave each Wraith you played a unique personality. Steve was my favorite, but who did you enjoy playing the most?
Thank you, by the way. That's really appreciated. I enjoyed, Steve. Steve's up there. I mean, like, Bob the Wraith had his own thing. He didn't have as much airtime as Steve, but Bob had something going on too that I kind of liked.
Yeah, he was running around undetected for a while there.
Yeah, I think if I were to like have a few more episodes with one of the Wraiths, it would either be Steve or Bob. I think because Bob was a little more mysterious because he just seemed like a badass. I mean, what was the name of the Wraith in Defiant One?
Defiant One, he doesn't have a name. I'm sure he does have a name in production, but I don't have it.
Yeah, he was a bit of a badass too, that guy. Because he was just like
Desert Wraith.
You could tell he was an old, kind of gnarly Wraith, like war Wraith. And he was just like throwing everything at Shepard in that episode, and that was kind of fun too, because it was like, how do you kill this guy? That I'm sure that's how Shepard's character was thinking, because he was kind of crafty. He was good with tech, and he had that ship there, and he had that stash of weapons, and he was like, he could do hand-to-hand combat with the knife and everything.
You got a lot out of that character, yeah.
Yeah, that was a fun day. That was I enjoyed. We were in this desert, which was in Richmond of all places, which is like a suburb of Vancouver.
Mm-hmm.
Which I didn't even know there was a desert area out there, but that's where we were shooting, and it turned out pretty good. I think that was as far as like watching one of like the more action oriented episodes. That was a pretty good action oriented episode for sure.
Lock Watcher wanted to know, were all your lines looped after the performance because of the teeth?
Yes. Okay. I went to an ADR studio in North Van, and I had to do all of my lines over again. So, because with the teeth, they'd come out, but they would kind of come out a little bit slurred.
Yeah. And
it's funny because I was just watching last night an episode of Resident Alien with Alan Tudyk.
Yep. Who also played Sonny in iRobot.
Yes, he played Sonny in iRobot. Yes. So great show, filmed locally.
Yes.
And he does the same kind of thing where he's mostly out of makeup, but he goes into makeup as the alien sometimes. And you can see them. Sometimes they go back and forth in the same scene because you'll see the perspective of like, there's these two kids in the episodes who can see him as the alien, but only these kids can see him as the alien. So in those scenes, it'll go back and forth between Alan Tudyk, looking like Alan Tudyk, and the alien, which looks very kind of like gray style alien, big eyes. And you could hear the difference between like the two performances, because the one has sharp teeth that are, like the Wraith had, and the one obviously doesn't. So yeah, I'm surprised they didn't ADR that in that show, actually. But yes, I did have to do my entire performance for any given show again, audio, like verbally in the ADR recording studio. Yeah.
Is that a pain in the ass, or is it perfectly satisfying?
I always look forward to those. I always look forward to them.
Okay.
I mean, sometimes there's some challenges with like linking it up so it's totally in sync, so it looks like it's actually being said at the moment. But I'm always love those challenges, and usually those guys were always just so chill. They were just like, yeah, let's try it again, and it was pretty almost like relaxing compared to like actually being on set.
Yeah, because you're not in the makeup.
Because you're not in the makeup and there's no cameras and you're just got, it's like a little more, they book like a good long 2 hours or whatever, like more than enough time to get all the ADR lines in and yeah, it's not so bad, but it's actually, I looked forward to those days actually.
Would they book you and Andee at the same time, or would you see her coming in or out, or was it completely separate?
I think it was completely separate. I don't think I saw Andee there. No, I don't recall. I mean, if it did, it would maybe just like in passing, like in the parking lot, like she was just pulling out or something like that. Maybe one time, but I don't think so. Actually, I don't know. Double check with Andee.
I will.
See what she's. Yeah, but yeah,
absolutely. In Condemned, you play one of my favorite Wraith. JS asked this. One of my favorite Wraith, who he's sitting at a table and he's eating and he's drinking. JS said you came off in a creepy kind of Dracula sort of way, and the wine drinking almost made him scarier. Did you approach this character more elegantly? How was it portraying this kind of creature that is doing these things that is completely foreign to it but completely vital to us? It was a very creepy scene watching him eat.
It was, yeah. And I remember discussing with the director at the time, like how I should eat and like, does he kind of chew his food or is it more of just like a bird who just like throws it back and
right.
Like he has a gizzard or something to digest or to break down what he was eating. But yeah, it
was Peter DeLuise who directed that one.
Yes, of course, it was Peter. Yes. Yeah, Peter's great. I love Peter. He not only did Peter give a great job directing some of those episodes, he also gave me a tour of the Louvre in Paris, France.
Really?
Whenever I did a fan convention with him in Paris, him and his two brothers as well gave me the speed tour of the Louvre. And like, this is the Mona Lisa. This is the Venus de Milo. It was awesome. So big up Peter. Always enjoy working with him. But yeah, I love the way he directs because he gets so into it, and it's like he takes on the vibe of the Wraith himself in some of his mannerisms. Whenever he's like, he'd be like, he's kind of like, and he gets right into it, which is very. Like he gives you an example of what he wants to see sometimes, which is it's a different way they're working than some directors, but it comes across like clear as day. So yeah, that character had a certain he was dignified. So I was thinking like, okay, this Wraith is like royal blood. So this would be kind of like the Prince William of Wraiths, and so. He would conduct himself accordingly. So he would consider himself to be like not just like somebody who feeds off of other beings, but you'd also invite him to a dinner party and he'll be a
he fit right in.
He'd fit right. So I was just like he went out of his way to learn those kind of etiquettes, that type of etiquette, so that he could almost ingratiate himself to whoever he was doing dealings with. And in that scene, I'm pretty sure there was a bit of a negotiation, right? There was so he kind of like to make, even though you could see that the gentleman who played was it the Chancellor or something like
very
this?
Close. Let me pull this up here. The actor, it was the Elysian Magistrates. The actor.
Magistrate.
Yeah,
yes.
He's appeared in Alan C. Peterson. He's appeared in Stargate before.
Alan C. Peterson. Yes, great actor. And I could, he gave me so much to work from because he was like trying not to show he was kind of freaked out by what I was doing, but at the same time he was also like being charming himself.
Right.
And so it was this whole kind of game underneath what we were talking about, being like, yeah, this is me, like as a Wraith, taking part in your human customs. Aren't I doing it so well? But I'm still trying to scare you a little bit at the same time. And he's kind of like, oh yeah, it's great. It's fine. But you are scaring me just a little. And so it's kind of like that whole, like what's going on underneath the surface of these talks. But yeah, it was it was a unique amongst the different unique characters of Wraith. It was definitely one that it stood out for me as well as being like I could bring that side almost like I don't know. I think of some of these characters. The classic British bad guys of
right.
certain. When you think of Star Wars too, like
you may fire when ready.
Yeah. A lot of the Empire that working under Vader or the Emperor, they were all like these great British actors, and so a little bit of that went into I think that version of the Wraith for sure.
I tried selling your contact lenses on eBay through PropWorks, and that's one of the few flags that we got from eBay saying you cannot sell contact lenses on eBay. I don't know what happened to these things because we couldn't sell them. I certainly didn't take them. But one of the things that Andee said that she would experience is that she would have to have someone drive her home at night or make sure, because your vision would tunnel all day long, and at the end of the night you couldn't see.
Yeah, no, that was a thing like that. I mean, I remember on one of the particularly long days, and I think it was like for me, excluding like when crew call was, it was bordering like a 16-hour day. One of the longer days I had on set. I remember the contacts not coming off my eyes. They were like stuck to my eyes. I guess there wasn't enough solution put in during the day, but it was like we had to peel them off. Like I was actually worried I would have like vision damage. Like it's just another one of those things that was like, okay, this is part of the role. But that I remember at times it was like having almost like a blurriness like afterwards and being like, oh my God, I hope this is just like temporary. But yeah, it was and I'm not a contact wearer. I don't have glasses, so it was something that I didn't have much experience with prior to. I mean, it totally added to the character and made the characters look so fearsome, having those cat eye kind of like greeny yellow like colored lenses. Like they were awesome to look at. But yeah, sometimes they were a challenge to remove, and just having them all day sometimes made the vision a little blurry at the end of the day. She's right on that. Yeah.
You guys created one of the more impressive races in all of the Stargate canon visually. I've had conversations with the Stargate novel writers on this show where they say they loved taking the Wraith apart because as novelists, they're able to go into their background in ways that, we can't because we're just watching them, whereas they would have to like sink into their motivations, much like you guys had to. And it's an extraordinary array of performances over the course of those 2 seasons. And I just really appreciate you coming on and discussing them.
Yeah, no, I mean, you have to give credit where credit is due to the writers. There's some great writers on the show. And they really helped bring the characters to life, and then it made our job a lot easier just to translate the words off the page for sure.
If Brad Wright and Rob Cooper called you tomorrow and said they were bringing Atlantis back for a season 6, would you do it?
I would be very open to that. Yeah, I would be very open to that. Yeah, I mean, like season 6 or like a reboot.
Well, Amazon and MGM, who knows what they're going to be cooking up next? So it's entirely possible. Yeah, we've got our ears to the ground.
And this is. I would be very open to having that discussion for sure. Because I have been on a show. It was just the one episode, but it was on The Expanse in season 3, and that show went from sci-fi to being bought by Amazon. So, and that's how it continued. It probably wouldn't have continued if it wasn't for Amazon buying it, right? Yeah. So, yeah, anything's possible. I mean, we've seen it happen with so many shows, like even like Arrested Development, like going from Fox, one of my favorite comedies, to then being like produced in season 4 by Netflix. And it happens all the time now these days.
It's just crazy. The sky's the limit. I'm hoping that Stargate will be back in some form sooner rather than later. And if there's a chance of the Wraith reemerging, I would love to see you back in some form. Is there Any anything that you've got in the works that you can tell us about, or is everything that you're working on right now hush hush?
I've signed several NDAs recently, standing, of course, for non-disclosure agreements. So I can't say a lot right now.
Okay.
I can say that something I'm most excited about during the time of quarantine since like March of 2020 and even prior to, I've been working on my own screenplays, and I've written 2 now. One is like fully polished and has several rewrites, and I feel it's almost ready to be read by certain people. The one is just like the first draft, and it needs a couple more drafts. But I'm also working on this 3rd script, which I'm doing the treatment for right now, and it's I'll say it's a comedy. It's an adventure. It's otherworldly,
okay.
And yeah, I'll leave it at that for now.
Sounds like it's up our alley.
Yeah, I think it definitely would be something that some of the fans of the show might be into.
Okay, sweet.
Yeah.
Well, we will keep an eye out, and I wish you all the best. Truly, thank you so much for coming on, James. This has been tremendously overdue, but it's been a pleasure to have you.
Thank you very much, David. Really appreciate it. Thanks for all the fans for writing in and for being great, giving the great questions you were sharing with me today. And also just for the support over the years, some of the most dedicated, like awesome fans I've ever experienced. So thanks.
Thank you.
Truly.
Thanks so much to James Lafazanos for joining us in this episode. And I really appreciate everyone who submitted the questions that made up the bulk of this episode. The people who submitted questions that their questions were answered, but their names weren't read. I wanted to give them a shout out to Christina Becker, Undead Brett, Kenyon Moon, and Matthew Hall, David Rapp, Memcheck01, Jeff Davis, and everyone else who submitted questions. I really, really appreciate it very much. We have merchandise. Dial the Gate is brought to you every week for free, and we do appreciate you watching. If you want to support the show further, buy yourself some of our themed swag. We offer t-shirts, tank tops, sweatshirts, and hoodies for all ages, as well as cups and other accessories in a variety of sizes and colors at dialthegate.com. We have a number of special guests heading your way for the month of March, a couple who have never been on the show before, and you can go to dialthegate.com and see the complete list for yourself over there. I appreciate you tuning in, and before I let you go, though, I really want to give thanks to Linda Gategaber Fury, as well as my moderators, Summer, Tracy, Keith, Jeremy, Reese, and Anthony, that make this whole thing possible. And big thanks to Frederick Marcoux at Concepts Web. He's our web developer on Dial the Gate. Also, a big thank you to Jeremy Heiner, our webmaster, who keeps the site up to date. My name is David Reed. I appreciate you tuning in. We'll see you on the other side.